Bring in our panel now to dig deeper on our lead story, those dismissed cases against James Comey and Letitia James. Neama Rahmani is a former federal prosecutor, and Bill Brennan is a former attorney for President Trump. Great to have you both with us. Neama, a federal judge ruled, as you know, that Lindsay Halligan was illegally appointed as U.S. attorney because the law only allows the president to appoint one. She was the second. It seems pretty cut and dried. On what grounds will the White House appeal?
The White House is going to appeal on two bases. First, they're going to argue that Halligan was a special attorney. Now, the problem is that appointment was after she personally went into the grand jury to indict both Comey and James. And they're also going to argue that any future indictment should relate back to the timely indictment. The problem with this case is not the James case. They're going to have another assistant U.S. attorney go in and refile that case. It's going to be fine. It's really the Comey case because that 5-year statute of limitations will have run. If you read the judge's order, he dropped a footnote saying that because the statute has run and it was a void indictment because Halligan's appointment was invalid, it can't relate back and it can't be refiled. So in terms of victory laps, Comey may end up doing one, depending on what the Fourth Circuit and Supreme Court do. I think Tish James is going to have to defend this case on the merits and make the same arguments that we've talked about, vindictive prosecution and so forth.
Wait, to be clear, Neama, you're saying that the clock, he's run out, that this judge is saying you don't have any more time? There isn't sort of like the clock was frozen, right before, the statute of limitations ran out?
That's absolutely right. And it wasn't necessary to the motion, but there's a footnote that the judge dropped saying because the original indictment is void, any future indictment that's past the statute of limitations is also going to be a problem. So I think Comey has a strong argument for dismissal here where James doesn't necessarily have some.
Jim, it is worth remembering that Lindsay Halligan was appointed after the first interim U.S. attorney, Eric Siebert, was fired because he refused to file charges against Comey and James. Siebert said there wasn't enough evidence that they committed crimes. Trump dumped him and then put Halligan in, and she got this indictment 4 days later.
Well, that's a big part of the calculations on this 120-day time period that's set forth in Section 546. And Judge Curry calculated the court's numbers and interpretation. What happened with Siebert was appointed. The 120 days were ticking. At the end of the 120 days, one option is the judges on the district court can then appoint, and that happened.
Right, but the president can't appoint a second interim U.S. attorney.
Well, that's what the appeal will be about, as Neama said. Siebert either quit or was fired, but left. We can all agree on that. And then Halligan was appointed. The Comey team argues that's an invalid appointment. Neama makes a good point. The cases between James and Letitia James and James Comey are different regarding timing. James Comey's statute ran right at the time of the indictment. Now, there is a section, United States Code 3822, that gives kind of a parachute, a 6-month window where an indictment that was brought within the statute can be kind of resuscitated. But if the judge, and she kind of indicated where her head was with that footnote, if the judge felt, and if the higher courts feel on the appeal, that the underlying indictment was kind of void ab initio, void from the beginning, then I don't know 3822 kicks in, and Comey might be okay.
Yeah, Neama, late last week, a judge, also not a different judge, raised serious questions about how Halligan got that grand jury to indict Comey, that Halligan may have misled grand jurors in her instructions, and that she failed to show the final indictment to the whole grand jury before they voted on it. These are rookie mistakes, but they're serious.
No question. And it's really an amateur hour at the Department of Justice. And these are self-inflicted wounds. Look, I know a lot of people watching don't like James Comey, but if you wanted to go after him for this leak to the Wall Street Journal, why didn't you do so in 2017 during the first Trump administration? Instead, you wait till the 11th hour, you appoint someone who has no prosecution experience whatsoever. The first time she walks into that grand jury room is to handle one of the biggest cases for the Department of Justice. So the reason we're here is because the Department of Justice waited. They put on a rookie, as you said. Typically, the DOJ, this is pro forma. I probably went to the grand jury at least 100 times. I never had an issue with one of my indictments because this is something all young prosecutors know how to do. You don't put someone in that grand jury room who's never handled a criminal case before, just days before the statute of limitations is running, on a false statement to Congress about a previous leak because you're trying to bootstrap it in. So again, had they handled it timely, we wouldn't be here.
Yeah, and she was in that grand jury room alone, to that point about the lack of experience. So, Jim, what do you think is going to happen next? So now the DOJ is going to appeal. Are they going to try and appeal straight to the Supreme Court where they feel they will get and have gotten favorable rulings, or do they have to go through the Fourth Circuit?
Well, I think that they're not mutually exclusive. I think that the DOJ will appeal Judge Curry's decision, but they can do a lateral attack if they can find a U.S. attorney or an assistant U.S. attorney to present, especially in the Letitia James case. If they can just re-present it, there's plenty of time left on that one, and I think they'll adopt the position that 3822 applies in Comey and see what happens. But the cases aren't over by any means.
Right.
I think Comey's in a better spot than James, though.
Neema, do you agree?
I do. And what Jim said is normally this relation back, the saving statutes, you know, you have a incorrect name on an indictment, right? You can go back and fix it even though statute is run. I think the problem here is, and as the judge said, because Lindsay Halligan wasn't authorized to be there, it's like me or you just go in that grand jury room, right? The indictment is void. And I think that's the problem the DOJ has with respect to Comey.
All right. Bill Brennan, Neama Rahmani, thank you both for your expertise. Really appreciate it.